Rightio, I thought I'd show you this winch setup. More was getting people asking how it works, but they always end up just with a puzzled look on their face because it's too hard to explain when everything's in place. So this is a good opportunity to show you the setup. Okay, so we're obviously at the rear of the truck, the cross member with the winch mounted to it over the rear axle. That sort of serves to strengthen the rear spring hats as well. I put a fair bit of effort into making sure the chassis didn't just pretzel itself, because essentially the winch is trying to pull that rear pulley towards it, which worst case scenario could just bend all the rear chassis. So winch cross member is braced back down to the rear pipe cross member and also to that pipe cross member, and then I've got these members that are removable because the tank needs to come out from above now because it's been relocated. So these are removable, but they brace between the winch and this rear bar, whatever you want to call it, which is a tow bar come rear pulley point come fairleading out, and batteries sit in there. Don't have batteries under the bonnet. This is the free spool, winch free spool, so that it can be used when the tray's on. Nice and simple, keeping it simple. So this rear pulley is just like a snatch block type pulley you'd use on a winch recovery, double up your effort. Yes, I've used like 4 of them, whatever it is, as pulleys, guides. So anyway, this one here is centered on the chassis, centered in line with the tow bar, center of the vehicle. And then the winch was offset on the chassis so that the center of the drum is in line with this side of this pulley, which is where it's always going to pull in line from. So it runs through this pulley, heads forward, and through a number of pulleys. These are just snatch block pulleys as well that I modified. Through a number of them pulleys, heads towards the front. It's getting dark, looks like it might rain, so anyway, so yeah, those pulleys, you can see what they're doing. Sends it down. That one brings it horizontal again, sends it forward in line. It's about 100mm up from the bottom of the chassis. So what I used to have, my old setup, it used to run into a Hawes style fair lead out of steel, because I've always had this steel winch rope. Used to run into the chassis rail and then through the chassis all the way out the front. always had me worried a bit, because you can imagine it's wearing along the chassis at the contact points. So with this rebuild I've decided to run it on the outside of the inside of the chassis rail, if that makes sense. So with this point here, as you can see, it's only like a narrow angle, shallow angle. It's about 8 degrees or something like that, maybe 10 degrees. So whereas these ones here, see, I don't know if you can see that. That was maybe 40 degrees. And that one is obviously needed to be a pulley. Almost does a 180 there, but yeah, these pulleys, they deflect the angle of the rope quite a lot. So they really need to be pulleys, but this one is just a very shallow deflection. So what I did was I just bent up a piece of pipe. That's seamless line pipe, heavy wall, 4.85 I think, mil wall. And it just deflects the rope. Don't know if you can see yellow pulley behind it, sends it forward, runs through there. So I've got it so that the rope, whoops, sorry about dropping you. The rope on this leading edge and on the trailing edge doesn't contact, it only contacts on a small patch like that, I guess. So yeah, I just made a little mount like that, tied it into the top of the chassis rail, same as how Nissan do it. And then running forward from there, this bend in the chassis was the next contact point. So I could have just let it run on the chassis, but I wanted to give it like a wear plate. So I've used some 6mm plate, I think it is. Bent an angle in it, a bit tighter angle than the chassis itself. So once again, the leading edge, the trailing edge, it doesn't run on, it just runs through the middle of the plate. Bit of a hoop to carry the rope, contain the rope when it's slack, and then runs forward from there. I don't know if you can see the engine mount up there behind the ocky strap hook. Yeah, well, I'm going to do a little drop hoop from there as well, just to carry the rope when it's slack. Doesn't need another point of deflection. And it actually doesn't deflect horizontally, the rope. I know you can't see it, but from that pulley there to the fair lead is a straight angle horizontally. I know it deflects this way, laterally. So runs to the front to the fair lead, which ain't there. Usually this rope's running about there like that. Runs to the fair lead, which is on the bar here. So the fair lead I just made out of a standard fair lead, just cut and shut it down. That bolts to the bar, 3 points, and then also with a U-clamp sort of style thing, clamps around the front cross member, the round cross member at the front. Clamps around there as well. So anyway, the winch rope comes out through the fair lead, and the hook hooks to this recovery point, which is actually an anchor point. There's recovery points there. That's just an anchor point for the winch rope, so the winch rope will come up, the hook will hook on there. Put a little bit of tension on it, and That's how she sits. That's how I travel. Obviously, when you want to do a front winch, put the winch in free spool with that linkage I showed you. Unhook the hook and run it out and do your normal front tight recovery. The rear recovery, the winch rope stays hooked to that recovery point. That's then the anchor point. The winch rope obviously goes to the front from the bull bar, so it's anchored at the bull bar, so this rope stays anchored. Put it in free spool. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here. That's just a shock absorber bush inside a ring I made out of a bit of pipe. Split pin washer either side, just contains it, gives it a bit of damping. So it's been like that for 5-6 years as well. Anyway, they put it in free spool, reach in through the fair lead. I've got a little hook under my seat. I reach in, hook it up to the rope, pull the rope out through the fair lead. So you've got a bite in the rope then, technical term for it. And in that bite you put your snatch block. One of these things. Snatch block like what you'd use on a recovery with a standard tight winch to double up your working effort. Yeah, so you attach one of them and run it out to your recovery point, and yeah, all rear winches are double line pull. So yeah, that's how you get front and rear winch out of a single winch, mid-mounted. Pulleys, as you can see from the wear pattern on them,